Hello and welcome to episode 26 of The Dive. I am Jat, joined by Kobe. You're going to say something as Mike?
Oh, yeah, you pointed at me, but
Huh?
this is Kobe speaking now.
And Azael.
This is Azael speaking now. Wow, we did it.
Copycat.
We
Yeah.
responded to the feedback of
We did.
speaking in the microphone after
It was
introducing
actionable.
yourself.
We did the action. It's great.
So this week we are talking about World's group stages because that is what time of year it is. And we're going to break down every single group of Worlds, tell you who's going to win, come in second, third, and fourth. Let's start with Group A, Kobe.
Why don't we start with who's going to win?
Who's going to win all of Worlds?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's just the
we're
world's
done.
power rankings now. All right. Well, Group A, we can start with Group A. Group A is EDG, SKT, AHQ, and Cloud9. So that is the first seed from LPL, the second seed from the LCK. This is the second seed from the LMS, and then Cloud9, third seed from North America, who you guys probably already know.
Yep, they got drawn in based on the play-in draw that happened last night after all of the play-in knockout stage had happened. I'm actually pretty happy with the way the overall play-in draw worked in just feeding into the groups because it felt like the weakest, so to speak, play-in team, 1907 Fenerbahce, went into the strongest group, or what you would define as the group of death. So we got a little bit more balance.
They
into
may
the
be
groups.
less happy about that, though.
Yeah, I mean, 1907 Fenerbahce probably would have preferred TSM's group, as would have TSM, Flash Wolves, and Misfits. But let's start with Cloud9, just because they are the most recent team that we had here. When Sneaky was interviewed after their series to qualify, he said, yeah, let's take Group A, because they'd basically have to pick between Group A and Group C. He said this was the lesser of two evils. How do you think he feels now that he's in it?
I mean, you still have to be somewhat nervous. I think that the one team that you're looking at and maybe as not as big of a threat is probably AHQ. I think that most people are seeing AHQ as the weakest team in that group and one of the weaker teams overall in the group stage. But I do think that everyone is expecting SKT is just a given to get out of groups, right? And maybe even it is for sure one of the favorites to win the tournament. And then EDG is a really, really strong team, but they have a history of doing poorly at Worlds, of underperforming, of choking.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Sneaky referenced in his interview. He's like, well, EDG is good, but they always choke, so we could win.
Yeah, I saw people. I think Mark tweeted something about Europe won this round of the draws or whatever. But I think that Cloud9's happy that they got this rather than Group C.
Mhm.
And Fnatic actually got a decently difficult group as well. I mean, Cloud9,
Yeah.
as you said before, SKT. Basically, the Korean team in any of the groups, everyone's like, all right, that's probably a loss for us,
Mhm.
right? So it's not a big difference between SKT or Longshu or something like that. And then as you're stacking up the other opponents, HQ most definitely after HKA's performance, getting knocked out, they actually kind of draw away some of the hype around HQ as well with their poor performance.
Yeah.
And then EDG, as Azael was talking about, their world's history is a little bit shaky.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that make you really question right now the LMS going in, just how bad Hong Kong Attitude essentially was during the entire play-in stage as well as the knockout stage, especially since many people were expecting HKA to be better than AHQ. Like, yes, the results are different, kind of in the same way that people are saying EDG is not the best team from China, even though they won China. So you do have to take that in mind, that AHQ was the number 2 seed and Edward Gaming was the number 1 seed. And then the last thing I kind of want to say is this perception that EDG chokes on the international stage. Like, yes, they haven't lived up to their expectations, which have been incredibly high because they won MSI in 2015. People were expecting them to compete for the world title in that world championship, and they made quarterfinals. The last 3 years, they have made quarterfinals. They just don't dominate teams in the same way. So I still think they're a pretty formidable opponent. I'd have them as a favorite for the second seed in that group.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but they met a Korean team in the quarterfinals all 3 years.
They met Fnatic in the quarterfinals
okay.
in 2015, and they lost that series 3-1.
Okay, so the other 2 years, I guess, were Korean draws. So it's always tough. I mean, we know that Korea is the strongest region. We know that those draws are going to be really rough for anyone who gets them. I, too, tend to think that EDG should be coming out of this group probably in second. I have them as one of the stronger teams in the tournament still, based on what I've seen from them in the LPL, right? Yes, there is a chance that they underperform. Yes, there is a chance that the pressure gets them playing in China or that they choke or whatever. But I think it's sometimes hard to take too much consideration of that when you're thinking
Mhm.
about power rankings. And even though Cloud9 looked incredible in the play-ins, they went 7-0. I think that they looked by far the best in that play-in stage. They're playing
Yep.
against such a higher class of teams now that it's not super comparable. It's like, great, you smashed Direwolves, you smashed Team One, you smashed Lion, but now you're playing
Yeah.
EDG and SKT.
It's a little
But
different.
but if they went into Group C, which is the other option, I feel like their chances would be even worse.
Oh, I completely agree.
I
So
think this
I
is the
think that's
better
why I
draw
think
for
they're
Cloud9.
that's why I think they're happy here
Totally
Yeah.
because
agree.
there was no draw where Cloud9 would be like, "Woo, we're
Yeah.
getting out." So
I think that because B and D, the other two North American teams, already got the easier groups. I think that Group A and Group C are the hardest for sure.
Are you excited for Jensen v Faker round 2?
Yes, I'm very
Oh
excited
my
for that.
god, I can't wait. I'm so excited for that matchup only because, uh, I went back and watched the first Jensen versus Faker matchup
Yeah,
after, like, the infamous going to clap Faker tweet,
yeah.
and he lost in, like, a hilariously bad fashion. He got unbelievably smashed in that game, and I don't think that's gonna happen again. So, like, I would be so hyped if Jensen actually does, like, anything positive against Faker based on how it went last year, so
I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's not just going to be a straight up 1v1. There's almost no chance,
yeah, but
right?
you're gonna remember it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it would be very exciting if we were to get that, and I think that Jensen in a 1v1 would do great, right? Like, his laning is actually very, very strong, but it's not like his team is even gonna leave Faker alone, right? They play so heavily around mid lane. I think the
Yeah.
SKT is gonna be expecting that, is also gonna play very heavily around mid lane. So it should be pretty explosive, and I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I mean, win or lose, I love the fact that some of the players are willing to come forward and actually kind of, jokingly trash talk a
Yeah.
little bit, because it does make it feel like a more important
It's
match.
the 5th game on day 1, SKT versus Cloud9.
I mean, if you're going over the other mid laner as well, you can't leave out Scout here. He's
Hmm.
he's definitely a guy that can play extremely aggressively and
Hmm.
likes to
Mhm.
take chances too. So
And Westor.
yeah, Westor or Chowie.
And Westor.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Westor, the guy with the worst CS differential of all mid laners, coming to the World Championship. One of these mid laners is not like the other. But yeah, the mid lane is actually super exciting for this group. Uh, we'll get to it later, but I love the mid laners in Group C as well. Do you have predictions for this group, or is there any other like storylines you want to touch on for EDG, SKT, HQ, or Cloud9?
I mean, it's kind of funny that we're talking about the group, and we haven't really even talked about SKT because everyone
Yeah.
just assumes that SKT is going to do super well. But SKT, to be fair, they're coming in as a second seed. They did lose, somewhat badly to Longzhu in the finals. I think that there, are some doubts about, are they a better team than Longzhu? How much will World's experience play into this? I still am of the opinion that, like, if I'm betting on a team to win the tournament, it's still SKT. It's not Longzhu for me
Mm.
personally, because I have a lot of faith in them. But it is also interesting, to talk a little bit about the fact that it's going to be Huni playing, as far as I know, in the top
Right.
lane
We should
instead of
talk about that.
Untara, because the sub situation was a pretty big topic actually throughout this year. Is it going to be Huni? Is it going to be Peanut? Is it going to be Antara? Is it going to be Blank? Right? What is the sub rotation? And they are bringing two junglers instead of the double top laner.
Exactly. So, unlike in the LCK where they can have the full giant sub roster, they had to choose a 6-man roster. And a lot of people were thinking they were going to bring Huni and Untara only because, like, in the finals, or at very least not bring Huni, because
Yeah.
Untara had been the starter for the latter half of the summer split as well as a lot of the playoffs. So, going with him is is pretty bold in a way, but I like the decision of them going with Huni only because if they are going to beat Longzhu, it doesn't look like they can do it with Untara because he doesn't seem like he can go toe to toe with Khan. And then Huni also performed at such a high level at MSI. Like, the world in which he was getting punished in the LCK was all these really disciplined LCK teams punishing him for being forward when he probably shouldn't be and was like drawing pressure, thinking he'd outplay. Most teams at Worlds aren't going to be able to do that. Like,
Yeah.
he bodied people at MSI, so I really like them bringing Huni, and then they still have the added flexibility of Peanut and Blank, which I think they're going to be starting Peanut the same way they would have been doing during the LCK. And then if something starts going awry, they bring in Blank to try and kind of steady the ship.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm completely in agreement. I think that if you're SKT, you have to feel like you're a heavy favorite against every team, probably except Longzhu and maybe Samsung if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt. But even against Samsung, SKT was very successful this year. So you just put all your eggs in that basket, right? You
Mhm.
expect that whether it's Huni or Antara, you'll beat everyone else. That's kind of the attitude they're going into it with, and the confidence that they're going into it with, I think.
Yeah, I actually really like the story of this group, like, because not only have Korean players been imported to all other teams, right, but Korean coaches as well. So now we have Reaper going against two of his former teams in EDG and SKT. Koma, Nofe, they're all floating around. These guys have been in the League of Legends scene in Korea for so long, and they all have a really, really like mixed history together. So I think those types of matchups, even just between coaches, are an interesting thing to look at since all of these teams are pretty long-standing teams and they have these long
Yeah.
histories. So we get into some grudge matches and some.
Yeah, as far as Worlds experience, these teams are, like, right up there at the top.
Mhm.
SKT 3 years in a row, Cloud9 Worlds every year they've been in the organization, Edward Gaming quarterfinals 3 years in a row, AHQ keeps going back to Worlds, like, you always see these names at the World Championship, so them all being in the same group is actually really cool.
Yeah, I'm also really excited. The last thing I kind of want to touch on is iBoy. I think that that's kind of cool to see actually, this guy who's brand new. He's playing in China. This is
He's like 5 years old, I'm pretty sure.
yeah,
Have you seen him?
maybe 6.
Yeah.
But it's
Boy, he's,
but it's
like, telling you.
well, while I yeah, while I didn't buy into the hype as much as I think some people have, perhaps, I did think he got outplayed kind of by Uzi in the finals and all that. He is a very big talent, and he's a young player, and he's having the opportunity to really make a name for himself in China at Worlds. First year playing, I think that's really really cool. And like this is kind of how stars are born sometimes,
Mhm.
right? If EDG can have a great performance, if this guy can have a great performance, his first time in against the likes of, SKT and Cloud9 and these teams that have been around for so long, you can become a household name overnight, which I think is one of the kind of beautiful things about Worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he does have a lot of, elder people, I guess, on the team. Like
Yeah.
Clearlove and Mako are
A lot of
two, yeah,
experience.
exactly. Two of the, great leaders there. So,
Clearlove changed his name to Clearlove7 because it's his 7th year playing professional League of Legends.
okay.
Um, I wanna talk very quickly about, like, before we do predictions, red flags for each team. Like, what are the weaknesses for these teams, and what do they have to watch out for? Unfortunately, EDG has a lot of them,
Yeah.
which makes them maybe a little less of a sure thing for making it out of the group. You always have Mouse, who got exposed last year in the top lane and hasn't gotten that much better in the top lane for EDG. He ended up having a lot of early game deaths, even in games they were winning. You have iBoy, who's played like 20 games and doesn't have any international experience. And then you have Clearlove, who I feel like in the last 3 years has not had a good world showing as a jungle. Plus Scout, who wasn't even their starting mid laner last year. So, like, there are so many unknowns
So you
with
flagged
known quantity.
everyone on the team except for
Except Mako.
Mako.
The whole
That
team is
guy's
just a
bomb.
flag.
That-
Mako is great.
That's just
Mako's beast.
Here's a flag for you. Here's
Yeah.
a flag for you.
All right. The size of the flags varies. I'd say Mouse has the biggest flag. The biggest.
He's got a
red
big
flag.
old banner.
Yeah, there's a medium-sized flag for Clearlove and like a little flag
Okay.
for iBoy.
Scout.
Uh,
What about Scout? He's got
I
like one
think
on his little thumb or something.
Clearlove's flag has an ash
Scout's got
arrow
like the
on it,
tiniest.
and he has to dodge not straight in a line to get away from it.
Yeah, I mean, EDG, they do have some things that you can kind of point out about them, of course, and I think that's true of most of the teams from LPL. But they also have such high moments, I think, as far as the mechanical play of some of these players. So
Mhm.
Scout is going to do some silly stuff, right? But he's also going to do some stuff that'll blow your mind. Like he's very, very, very good when he's at his best. And I think that's true of a lot of the best players from LPL because these are teams that traditionally people kind of criticize because it's less of a focus on macro play. It's less around playing around vision. It's less around wave manipulation. It's more about I'm better than you. I will out team fight you. And
And
there's
then they
just
do.
like, yeah, exactly. And then they do most of the time. And so while there are some issues for them, I also think that there's some very, very strong players and I still think that they have a pretty good chance to succeed.
Yeah.
And looking, across the board, it's like so SKT, there certainly are some flags I think you could say, but people are assuming that they're going to be the first seed. So,
Mhm.
but I mean, when you look down at AHQ, you already mentioned West Storm's laning. I think that's a really big thing, but
Yeah.
AHQ in general did not look that good, especially when you're thinking of the finals against Flash Wolves. They got beaten pretty bad. It was a 3-0. And I mean, Cloud9, they didn't even make it to the top 4 in playoffs this time, right?
Mhm.
Like these are not teams without blemishes across the board.
Yeah, Ziv on AHQ. is interesting because he is the top lane carry for that team. Like we have this big push towards Khan of Longzhu being like the true top lane carry. That's kind of how AHQ ends up having to play a lot of the time, especially when Wester is like a pressure vacuum in the mid lane where he usually loses his mid lane turret. Like they need to win those games through the side lanes, and oftentimes it is because of Ziv, which in a world could work against EDG and Mouse, but I don't see it working against like Huni or Impact in this group, for instance. So that weakness of AHQ, just like playing a much different game than other people, but not necessarily excelling at it, I think is their biggest flag, so to speak.
And I mean,
Kobe, Cloud9's biggest flag.
Cloud9's biggest flag for me is the slower late game decision making and their slow transitions through mid game. It often feels like they don't really have quick decision making or like a plan laid out ahead of time of how they're going to end out a game. And we saw it punished a lot in North America. That's one of the big reasons for me why they didn't have a great showing in playoffs. But Smoothie has specifically been talking about how this is the main thing that they're looking at, and he's a big voice on the team. So excited to see what they can do.
Yeah, one thing that is kind of a positive for me about Cloud9 more recently, I mean, people always talk about Jensen and their play around mid lane, but I've actually felt in the later end of the season as well as in playing that Sneaky has been looking really good. And it's felt like the team has had a lot of confidence in him, building more compositions around him. People think of the Zaya game, people think of, these sorts of games, but also in the play-in, they had him on Twitch, protect the Twitch type compositions, and he's looked very good. And it feels like their bottom lane is coming together more, and it's not more just Sneaky, the consistent guy who's going to do something for you later in the game. It's felt like he can be the focal point and can be successful with that, which I think is really important to have in this meta when we talk about Ardent Sensor, when we talk about playing through bot lane. Yes, you can succeed without your bot lane smashing, but it needs to at least be an option that you can draft around this, that you can be like, yep, we're going to play Kog'Maw. Yep, we're going to play Twitch. We're going to play whatever. And this is the focal point of the map. So I do like that Sneaky has been doing better. And that does kind of give me some more hope for them in the group. But do you guys want to get to predictions, rankings here?
Sure.
For Group A?
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. For me, it's SKT, EDG, Cloud9, AHQ. But I would say that 2 and 3, I think Cloud9, I think has a shot to actually get out of this group. But I do think that EDG should be favored.
Yeah, I would go with the same rankings: SKT, EDG, C9, AHQ. But I always hold out a little bit for AHQ, like upsetting people. I mean, even you talk about Ziv, like this guy has had big performances on international stages before, and I kind of put some weight on people with history. But yeah, I think that most people are gonna rank him that way, unless you're like really gung ho on
Cloud9.
Cloud9 making big moves.
Yeah, I agree. We're gonna have boring same predictions of SKT, EDG, C9, HQ. I look back at World's history, and whenever there's Korea and China in the same group, it's almost always Korea and China advancing. There's only been 2 instances when that wasn't the case. Interestingly enough, one of them was C9, and another one was, I believe, Origin back in the day. But even so, it could happen this year for sure. It's just EDG is the number 1 team from the LPL.
And I think a lot of what decides that is, did Cloud9 actually get a lot better in their boot camp? Are they playing at this higher level?
Actually.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. But there's also the other option, which is, were they just playing people that were much worse than them, right? And are they the same team? Because if they are the same team, I think they don't really have much chance, right? Like, because their summer slip was not super impressive. If they have made these significant improvements, the stuff that Smoothie's talking about, as you mentioned, then they have a shot for sure.
I would say at the very least, I am confident in Cloud9's direction that they want to go, right? The way that they want to play the game and their grasp on the meta, I think is really solid coming in, which hasn't always been the case coming, out of Worlds boot camps. There's always a lot of confusion. And especially with North American teams, sometimes we've come and been pretty far off the mark as far as what's actually meta. But I think that Cloud9, it fits them really well. They're definitely going to have a tank. They're definitely going to have that Ardent Sensor. Jensen can even play Galio in the mid lane, and
talking me into it,
that
man.
was something good to show. Yeah,
Cloud9 first place.
Yeah. I haven't finalized my pick'em yet. There's a chance that C9 just jumps into number 2. It's really close.
Yeah.
I feel like you have to take some risks in your pick'em
Yeah.
if you want a chance of making it right.
If you actually wanna
Anyway,
win.
so,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I reserve the right to flip flop on this
go out of there.
prediction
I
based on what
I
makes
actually
sense.
my pick'ems. I
Same.
already decided I was gonna have all North American teams make it out of groups.
What? So your prediction is C9 second?
Yeah, I actually just
You're changing
remembered
it.
that I'm gonna do that because I never doubted any North American team. I'm gonna get them all out.
Oh my God.
Thank you for that. All right. Well, we already know Kobe's.
Yeah, you know my
predictions.
Yeah.
Group B predictions too.
Yeah.
With all the
Immortals already
flags, we
out.
talked about EDG as well, man. Like, are we just blinded by them winning the LPL?
I mean, they won the LPL for a reason. Cloud9 didn't even get to the
Lucker
semifinals.
dogs. They lucked
Cloud9
into
didn't
it.
get to the semifinals in North America, and we're like,
That's-
You don't get
Cloud9,
punished.
will they win Worlds? Could they really do? We're like convincing ourselves.
So,
We're like, yeah, I
I'm
think they
sad.
could.
It's because there's no punishment for getting your pick'ems wrong.
Yeah.
The real question is, what skins will Cloud9 get when they win Worlds?
This is a tangent, but
Jensen Echo.
I want to shout out to Fischio for his Will X Win Worlds tweets throughout the year. I'm really sad that he has stopped doing them because
He hasn't
too many people
stopped.
are
He's
playing
done
it.
like 20 of them.
He tweeted a while ago that like he explained the
Oh,
joke.
he's
He's
dead.
like, these are jokes, not serious.
Well, he
But, like,
didn't even start it.
who started it?
He's not the one who started
Who
this.
started it?
I don't know, but it definitely
did, like-
wasn't Deficio because I remember him copying it.
I don't know. I credit him for Will Cloud9 win
Maybe he was
Worlds.
the first really popular person to do it.
Yeah,
so he
which
just-
I
he
have
just
to
stole
ask.
it from
Yeah.
Will Cloud9 win Worlds?
Of course.
There we go.
All right,
Group B.
B.
Longzhu Gaming, the #1 seed from the LCK. Immortals, #2 from NA. Gigabyte Marines, who get this spot, bought into the group stage based on the MSI performance and also because they won the GPL once again. And then Fnatic, who made it in after they 3-0'd their knockout stage game as well against Hong Kong Attitude, who was the other team from a major region that was in the play-in stage to earn their spot here.
Yeah, and I mean, Fnatic, I think, did look a lot better in the knockout stage in the best of 5, if you want to say that, than in the actual group. But this is a group to me that is actually going to be interesting because I think it's very competitive. I do think that Longzhu is the clear #1, right? But I think that Immortals and Fnatic are relatively similar level. I think that if Gigabyte Marines can show a high level of play as they showed at MSI, they could certainly be in there stealing games off people here too. So to me, this is a group where it would not be crazy to think that any of the 3 could get that second seed, which does make those games mean a lot and which does make it, very exciting from the word go.
I feel like people are still gonna underestimate the Gigabyte Marines,
Mhm.
and they're gonna kind of like laugh it off as like, oh yeah, they're the crazy team, they can play real aggressive and cheesy or whatever, but they're not in the conversation, right? It's really gonna be between Immortals and Fnatic. I don't think that's the case at all. Yeah, I really think that Gigabyte Marines can make some big headway here in this group. That being said, you already know my prediction though. And the
Immortals.
reason why I think Immortals are going to get out of this one is a lot off the back of Ole and Smithy. I think that they work together so much better than Jez's and Broxa if we're comparing them to Fnatic as far as one of the other teams that would try and get that second spot behind Longzhu. And I think that really goes a long way in the current state of the game.
Yeah, and to double back on Isaac's point about this being like the really close group, this is the type of group that after week 1, you're gonna think you know what's happening. Like there'll be one team at 3-0 and another team at 2-1, but like that won't have any actual implication on who gets out of it. Like this is one where I can see a ton of variation between who wins between Immortals, Marines, and Fnatic, and even taking a game off Longzhu, I can absolutely see because this is the most diverse group in terms of play style that we have at Worlds. Longzhu is the team that essentially defied the meta over in Korea, with Khan being a top lane carry. Currently, we see the World's meta, and we have this like Arden Sensor support, tank jungler world, but you look at Ole's best champions, and we're talking about like Bard and Thresh and Alistar. You look at Fnatic, who's been bouncing around with different play styles the entire year, and then you have Gigabyte Marines, who are different than absolutely everyone with the way they decide to play the game. So there's going to be so much variation in style in this group, which I think is going to lead to a lot of volatility.
Yeah, and I think to Kobe's point again about people kind of counting out Gigabyte Marines, Fnatic lost to Young Generation. That's the team that
And Young
Gigabyte
Generation almost
absolutely
beat WE.
Yeah, and that's the team that Gigabyte slammed. They actually beat them so bad in the finals that they role swapped their support to mid lane for the last game. and Archie played mid lane for them in the final game, and they won that game too. So
Mhm.
Gigabyte is very clearly, from all reports, from everyone I've talked to, and from everything I've seen, a, a big cut above young generation, right? And
Mhm.
YG beat Fnatic one game, should have beat them the second game. They were basically one Gragas barrel away from beating them the second game. So this is a team that certainly should not be underestimated. And I do hope that these teams are taking it seriously and are prepping for them. Otherwise, I think you can expect to see Gigabyte taking games.
Yeah, especially because of the coach of this team. Everybody keeps talking so much about this coach, and he's actually one of the reasons why Levi stayed on the team. Because after Levi's MSI performance, he was getting a lot of foreign offers
Mhm.
um, all over the world. But because of the time that this coach is going to put in, I feel like Best of Ones is so explosive here. This could definitely be Gigabyte Marines taking multiple games in this group off of people.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I mean, I think that Longzhu is going to be really the benchmark, kind of that by which we have to measure all these teams because
Mhm.
they have been so strong. They beat SKT in the finals. They are the LCK champion. Everyone is expecting a lot out of them, and it will be really interesting to see how these teams actually stack up against Longzhu.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to get second, you're going to probably get. There's a high chance of getting a Korean team in the quarterfinals.
Mhm.
So even if you get out, if you're getting absolutely obliterated versus Longzhu and then you draw SKT or something, it's not looking much better. So I'm really excited to see if Longzhu can actually continue to pull off, carry top lane style, if they're going to be continuing to go for that. Because, you talk about playing to the meta and you kind of talk about Cloud9. Well, they're going to have impact on a tank. They're going to have, the kind of carry bot lane. They're going to have these different things. And Khan is one of the few guys that kind of breaks the meta a little bit, so to
Mhm.
speak, and likes playing the Jax. And Fiora just got buffed again, so we could be seeing maybe something a little bit outside the meta from this team.
Yeah, and I'm so interested to see how that works at Worlds, but to speak to like Longzhu's strengths, it's not just like they only carry through the top
Of
lane.
course.
They put a lot of resources to the top lane. So Cuz is up there more than he is in other lanes, and he almost ignores the bottom lane. And what enables this team to be so strong is the fact that Prey and Gorilla, with less jungle attention than anyone else, still smash the lane. So it very easily gives them two very strong pushing side lanes, and then they have a mid laner who averages less than 1 death per game,
Yeah.
0.9 deaths per game. So there's very little fault in that team. They always have the jungler top lane, their mid laner never dies, and their bottom lane is super solid at getting their own advantages. So it's just an incredibly hard team to actually strategize against, even if we say they like don't necessarily play the meta.
Yeah, I mean, they're one of the teams that when you watch them, it always kind of feels like they're doing the right thing. You might be able to nitpick their opponents a bit and be like, oh, maybe they could have exploited Longzhu if they did this a little bit more.
Mhm.
Kobe and I were recently just watching, from the regular season, a Longzhu Samsung series, and we're kind of thinking, oh, well, maybe Samsung should have played to topside more and try to punish Khan on the Jax. Maybe
Mhm.
they could have done this or that. But then you're looking at it from Longzhu's perspective, and you're like, well, what are they doing wrong? And it didn't really feel like they were doing anything wrong. You were talking about like warding timings in the bottom lane to avoid that pressure as it's coming in. They were really smart about that. BDD, playing very well for himself. Khan being able to take over the game if he's left alone on one of these carries. Like they just feel like a team that is a really well-oiled machine.
Yeah, and plus, Khan can play carries. Plus, BDD loves playing Galio, or I don't know if he loves it, but he plays a lot
Loves
of
playing
it.
Galio.
We always
Loves
say that, like,
Galio.
if a player's on a champion a whole bunch of times, we're like, oh yeah, he loves this champion. No, coach put me on.
He probably loves winning.
Yeah. But and even Cuz, right? He's mobile as well. So like Longzhu could find a way, finds ways to put tanks in there too. So I am really curious to see what they're gonna
And I mean, Khan can play
come out
tanks.
with.
So like,
Mhm.
if they think that's what they need to do to win, I'm sure that they will do that, right? Uh, Even in the series we're talking about, he was playing Gragas top and things like that. So you can definitely see him playing tanks as well.
Yeah, this is the hard part of the discussion, though. We all agree Longzhu is number one. And then we also just had this, like, don't count Gigabyte Marines out. Oh, Immortals is really solid, but
And
Fnatic
then
was
everyone's
also
like, Gigabyte
getting
Marines
nerfed.
4 seed.
Exactly, right? Now justify the rankings. Justify second, third, and fourth based on how these matchups go. Like, that's the struggle we have
Yeah.
right here, because it's really hard to put
You already
someone below
know my
Gigabyte
second.
Marines.
What you got, Jet? What's your
Kobe,
second?
you're just going to play the NA fanboy card, just be like, yeah. NA
No, I gave you my reasons here for Immortals.
Yeah, I think Immortals is getting out of the group, too.
Just gonna play the.
Yeah, I think we're all NA fanboys in this group. And for me, the big reason is is I did not think Fnatic looked very good in the play-in. I did
Yeah,
not
yeah,
think
you
that they
tweeted out they were gonna lose, and then they
Yeah,
all
and then
flamed you
then
and
they 3
retweeted.
0 and they hit me with the retweets, and
You
that's
tweeted
fair.
that as well as said it on the dive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Twitter's dangerous place, man.
That's fair play, you know, like,
It is
I
fair
don't
play.
predictions are gonna be wrong. I think they showed a higher level in the best of 5 than they
Mhm.
showed in the actual, group stage of playing. But that being said, I still feel like this is a vulnerable team. They have not looked as good to me, this year. I don't think that they have looked as strong, and I keep seeing stuff, like, when we talk about when you watch Longzhu, it doesn't feel like they're doing anything wrong. Like, when I watch Fnatic, I feel like there are a number of holes. I feel like even, in the playing group stage, there was problems with their laning phases. Even against HK, it felt like there were a lot of opportunities for HKA to take over those games, and I think that they were better and they showed a higher level than their opponents. So that never happened. But this is a much more talented group, and I think that Fnatic could be exploited unless they can continue to improve, unless they can continue to kind of close those gaps as they did
Yeah.
in between the playing group and the knockout
Yeah.
stage.
Fnatic is this interesting team because they have been very confident at times, and they've reinvented themselves all within the same split.
Hmm.
Like, they were smashing people with the Kennen bot lane and, like, the split push top and,
Yep.
you know, picking into losing matchups and then just outplaying people to then snowball the game, and, like, that was their unique style that no one was gonna be able to react to, and when we made our Rift Rivals predictions, we were like, "Yeah, Fnatic's unique style that no one is able to react to," and they got smashed.
Yeah.
It just obliterated the Rift Rivals. Now they've kind of reset into this what feels to me like a team fight style.
Hmm.
Like they're just picking good team fight compositions, and in the same way, like almost saying a little bit "laning phase be damned," which can get you in a lot of trouble against some of these incredibly strong early game teams.
Yeah.
Marines, if they're going to smash you, is going to beat you early. Immortals is one of the best early game teams in North America. Always prioritizing winning matchups for Flame as well as Cody Sun and Olay, and not really prioritizing mid lane matchups, which is just an Immortal style thing. And then
Good luck coming back against Longzhu if you get behind.
exactly. So those are the things that worry me about Fnatic is they do often almost overly tunnel towards a specific style, and I think that ends up hurting them in the draft phase and how it plays out in game.
But I will say, as far as their strengths, I think like I am always quite impressed with Soaz. I think that Soaz is a very smart player, and I think he's very consistent in the top lane. He's a guy who does seem to constantly be able to find really good engages for the team. I think that their teamwork is very good. How they actually play together, once they get past the laning phase, I do think that as you said, it's more of a focus on the late game, and I think that Reckless performs very well in team fights. I think that this is a team that can do well if they can get through those earlier stages of the game, but just based on what we have been seeing, you feel like if you give those opportunities, then you maybe don't get a chance to come back against better teams.
Yeah. So just as an example, I had let me know if this makes sense. I
Okay.
had Stats Team basically make a stat for me. We have the ability to take all of the regions at Worlds, games from the summer split, playoffs, and regionals, and basically tell us which champion matchup is like winning and losing. So it'll say Syndra has played against Orianna 73 times, and the average of that CSD at 15 was +5, right? So then we say, okay, Syndra is a favorable matchup against that.
Hmm.
And then essentially what the stats team did for me is they took every matchup that a player has played and gave me like an average of what their matchup should be if they were like an average player.
Versus what they do.
Exactly. To then see like, does this team pick them in favorable matchups on average, and how do they perform versus what they are expected? With that, Soaz gets averagely drafted the worst top lane matchups of pretty much any player at Worlds. So like when he's
Dog
memeing
champs.
about dog champ on Shen, like he takes one for the team
Yeah.
consistently in the draft phase where they're prioritizing other champions and just banking on Soaz being able to be really good. So to speak to that, like he has been really good. You don't notice that he's consistently put in bad matchups because he performs so much better.
I think the one thing that we have to caution against, or one of the main things to caution against here for Immortals, as you guys have jumped on the bandwagon and now it's overloaded.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
We
You gonna
can't
jump
all
off?
fit.
You wanna jump off?
I'm not jumping off.
Okay.
It's mine, my bandwagon.
You're the conductor.
I would say I am a little bit worried for Cody Sun in this group to see what Cody Sun's going to be able to do, because this is, Ardent Sense of Meta, like 80 carry performance is incredibly important here, especially towards the late game and towards the team fighting. So that plus kind of the champion mix up there for Olay and the support role would be where am I most worried probably for the team.
One of the kind of cool things about Immortals as a team is they seem very motivated as far as solo queue goes. and they're one of the teams that if you're not looking at the accounts that were already in,
Here we go. Talking about solo queue and scrims.
Go for it.
if you're not, it's just kind of fun, right? It's
This always works well.
if you're not looking at the pre-created accounts like the Korean accounts that have already been there all year, they have the top 3 boot camp accounts basically, and 2 of them are actually their subs and stunt. But then Pobelter is already high challenger. Flame is quite high up. Cody Sanole, they've all been playing, and they're all at least Masters plus. Even Smithy is at least Masters plus, and he's not known at all for his solo queue. So this is a team that obviously is very motivated and is putting in not only scrim time, but they're putting in a lot of solo queue time. And yes, that does not always correlate to stage success, Kobe. I know. It still does, I think, speak to the work ethic of the team and how motivated they are to succeed with this roster, because it feels like a team where all the players are very bought into the success. They're very happy with their team, and they're trying to see how far they can kind of take it.
Chat said also that the jungle sub is going to play a game for sure at Worlds.
That is not what I said. I said I can see a world in which he plays.
I'm pretty sure you said he's definitely going to play. And
there
was
is a non-zero chance.
Yeah,
is what I said. You guys said definitely not. I said there's a chance.
Okay.
So I
Telling
can
me
be
there's a
wrong,
chance.
but
we're actually gonna have to check the tapes again.
yeah, sure.
Wait, was this on the
one.
dive? I thought that was just.
It was on the
Yeah,
dive.
this was last week's episode.
Okay.
And then
Because
you
we're
guys
talking about
chickened
solo
out. You
queue.
didn't want to make a bet on it.
Oh, I'm willing to.
No,
make a
I
bet
do
on
not.
that.
I do not think
Yeah.
there's a high chance.
This is one I think is a great bet. I'll take
Okay.
that.
Yeah. Okay. Do we
What-
have the same predictions?
Do we? Mine is going Longzhu, Immortals, Fnatic, and then
Is anyone putting
Gigabyte.
Gigabyte third?
No, because I'm not putting Fnatic or Immortals fourth.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're all in agreement. Then.
What about Longzhu? You're not gonna put Longzhu fourth
Maybe,
either.
Kobe.
Yeah. What if you put Gigabyte
Let's
first?
move on to Group C, shall we?
Well,
okay,
so it's Longzhu, Immortals, Fnatic, and Gigabyte. We're all pretty much agreed on.
yes, Group C.
We're all
This
agreed
is the one where we can actually have different predictions.
We could have done that in Group B. To be fair.
Yeah, I
Yes.
don't think it's that unreasonable, as much as I may get flamed for this, for Gigabyte to be above either of those two teams. Like, I actually
Yeah.
think that Gigabyte could get third or second, and that Immortals or Fnatic could get knocked down. That is not unrealistic to me at all.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All
We're in our
bases are
bases.
covered, boys. Can we move on to Group C now?
Yeah. All right. G2 Esports, Royal Never Give Up from the LPL, Samsung Galaxy from the LCK, and 1907 Fenerbahce.
Take
Sport.
your pick,
Esports.
because I feel like 1907 Fenerbahce
They're through for
is
sure,
a
so
dead
who's
team
next?
walking, and the other 3 is what I'm gonna choose from. Because looking at the play-ins, from
Their bracket stage did look better,
Fibonacci,
but they were playing against
They're
Team
playing
1.
as Team 1.
Yeah. The bottom laner who we went in on a little bit. He had a good series.
I mean,
Patton.
if you look at just his actual late game performance, good job. Keep it up. If you look at the laning, oof. It's not so good.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Kobe's right. I don't think we should spend that much time on them. I think they're a very clear underdog in this, just based on historical performance as well as what we've seen this year, and because G2 is the best team from Europe. Royal Never Give Up lost 3-2 in the finals, and Samsung Galaxy is a Korean team who was in World Finals last year with pretty much exactly the same roster. So
Yep.
they're back.
One of the most interesting things about this, so G2 for me, if you're looking at just international performance, like if you go back to MSI, you're like, wow, this is a great team. This should be, they should be really challenging for the top of this group. But I have kind of lost some faith over the last 6 months or whatever it is, since MSI, I guess 4 months or something, in G2, because they have performed a lot worse regionally. They actually did start to show a lot of weakness, although they did step it up in playoffs. After almost losing this place, they pretty much cut the rest of the way through. But Rift Rivals was not good for them. The regular season for a lot of it was not very good for them. And
every time I hear someone bring up Rift Rivals, I just imagine Deficio going, "That's bullshit. It doesn't matter." Anyways, continue.
okay, well, the EULCS, the great EULCS, where they did not do as well as they normally have, and that has kind of shaken a lot of my confidence in this team. And I feel like when you're putting them in a group that already is going to be ridiculously hard, this is essentially TSM's group from last year, right? You're just popping them in and Fenerbahce instead of like Splice or whatever. But this is a very, very difficult group. But I don't know, unless G2 can kind of recapture that magic, and maybe they have after their finals performance. Maybe I'm counting them out too early, but I don't really see them getting out of this group.
I think we have the danger of being in our like NA analyst echo chamber
Mhm.
here, unless Kobe's gonna blow our minds with some pro Europe talk. Like I am not hyped on any of the teams coming out of Europe.
Mhm.
And maybe I should be because of their, H2K making all the ways to semifinals. But like G2 in particular, their
It's
regular
such a hard group.
seasons it's a hard group for one, and their regular seasons have consistently gone downhill. From spring, summer, they had a 60% game win rate in the regular season in 2017. Then you can say, oh, they were, slow starters because they took a break after MSI and they only cared about Worlds and they were good in playoffs. They nearly lost in quarterfinals. Like they were incredibly close to losing that series to Splice. And then they did pull it together at the end,
Mhm.
which they should be credited for. But like that going up against Samsung and Royal Never Give Up, I see them as
It's just
underdogs.
such a hard group.
Let me tell you, I'm gonna blow your mind then.
Yeah.
Hit
With
me.
some pro Europe talk.
Hit me.
I have been hearing that they are actually doing pretty well in the boot camp.
Oh, you're talking about scrims? Just have you
Okay.
playing on
Yeah,
scrims?
yeah,
How are their solo queue
I don't even
accounts
have
doing,
to
Kobe?
believe Kobe. I remember this time.
They actually have been doing. I'm still worried for Trick specifically in this group because MLXG can go super hard. Like this guy is nuts. He'll do literally any jungle route you can come up with. He'll probably try it. And I can definitely see that kind of like tilting Trick. And him having a poor international performance again, as it has happened before.
Right.
But as a whole, I have a lot of confidence in Sven, in Perks. So some good backline carries for these guys.
Right.
And then the front line has always been pretty solid for them. So I actually think that it is really close between those three. I'm not actually putting G2 really much below Samsung or RNG. I think that it is like almost like 33% here for each of these ones.
Here's where I see it though. Like, yes, this meta is good for G2. Sven, super consistent as being a world-class AD carry.
Even internationally, time and time again.
And Perks has been good in team fighting, but I do stand by the fact that he's been very inconsistent. But then I look at the strengths of Royal and Samsung, and they're right there too. Ruler led the LCK in damage percentage from an AD carry perspective. They too play very slow like G2 and then probably make cleaner decisions than them down the stretch, have Crown in the mid lane, and probably a better top laner if the game stretches and they're able to play the side lanes. And then I look at Royal Never Give Up, and they have the LPL MVP in Xiaohu and Uzi as an AD carry. So like the points of strength where G2 is strong, I see RNG and Samsung being a little bit stronger.
To be fair, I do think that Crown has been a lot worse recently. This is
His
not
split was not very good.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this isn't Crown from last year Worlds where people were as hyped about him. I don't think that he is as untouchable anymore. Perks, I think certainly how he laned against Faker at MSI, if he can put up those kind of performances, I think he can beat Samsung in lane. And I do agree, it's not like they're completely outclassed, but I just think it's a super hard group. And if G2 got put in either of the other European team spots, I would be predicting them to get out of groups for sure. I think that if they were, in Group D instead of Misfits, or they're in Group B instead of Fnatic, I think, G2 for sure, you're out of there. But this is just such a hard group that it's completely like, I mean, like you said, any of them could get out, but I just think that Samsung has shown like the way that this team performs internationally. We looked at last year and we looked at how they play. Like they're very methodical. They're very consistent.
In the games that me and you were VOD reviewing, Samsung, Core JJ was making some weird moves on
that game was actually trouble. The Zyra game? You should tell him about it.
So I forget exactly which game it was. Like we were watching a lot of.
It's the last game of regular season.
Okay, they keep on like starting up objectives like Baron and Elder Dragon and stuff like that. And it's like pretty close. Like it's either like 5 or 4 members of the enemy team are up, or like they're kind of far and they're like rushing to the objective or something like that. And in multiple occasions, Core JJ on Zyra is using Zyra ultimate on just straight on Baron or straight on the dragon to try and like
to enrage his plants and kill faster.
Yeah, to try and like kill it faster, and then they get almost wiped after. They get wiped afterwards because like
didn't kill it.
Zyra doesn't have her ultimate to do anything.
It was actually hilarious. The first time he ulted Baron, we're kind of like,
wait, was that a
misclick? Probably misclick, no problem. And then they go over and there's an Infernal Dragon up, and he's just
it wasn't even Elder.
Yeah, he just over the wall, just walks over and just ults. We're like, what the hell? And I guess it wasn't an accident. So
did they win the game?
No, they got
It was their series versus
versus
Longshu.
Longju.
Where
They got
Longju
2-0.
lasted them.
That's bad. Well, I do have some stats.
Okay.
Feel free
Hit us
to
with
use them however you want. Samsung's combined kills per minute is the lowest of every team at the World Championship.
LCK plays slow.
LCK plays slow. Samsung plays slowest of the LCK that are at Worlds. Secondly, RNG's first blood is insane. 71% first blood percentage, 10% higher than any other team in the LPL, to speak to MLXG's early jungle path.
I feel like this is nothing new from last year, though. They were in the same group last year, basically, together with TSM and Splice. Yeah. And those were very similar stories for these two teams. Like they haven't changed their identities. So I don't know if the identity of that team and the way that they play is like a weakness for them, because they've shown like they got out of that group. They went to the semifinals with that exact same strategy, with the exact same players.
Doesn't mean you're bad or not able to make decisions. Like a lot of times, especially when we say like LCK in general plays slowly, it's about what openings are your opponents giving you and what openings are you giving your opponents. And I think Korean teams and Samsung in particular are incredibly good, at least they were last year, at transitioning that safe style, so to speak, but still exploiting the openings their opponents give them. So like, yes, they didn't kill anyone in the LCK because the teams play safer, but as soon as they play a team that is taking too many risks, boom, they're right there to punish it. So I think Samsung is a great matchup against RNG. Like I see them being able to punish that. I see them avoiding a lot of the first bloods from the crazy jungle pass MLXG has and out farming them and getting leads. So I see that as stylistically a very good matchup for Samsung. And then against G2, I see it being good as well because both those teams are pretty low action.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that I'm of the opinion that teams that are really consistent, slow teams, like as far as, I mean, when I say slow, I mean essentially they don't fight as much, right? But they still pressure you very heavily by taking away whatever they can. Like to your point, they're getting vision control, they're taking away jungle camps, they're not giving you opportunities to fight because they're not mispositioning. They're essentially trying to choke you out of this game and say that we're going to play a better macro style game. We're going to be better in the team fights later in that game once we have the advantages. And I think that Samsung should match up pretty well against both these teams because to me, G2 and Samsung play very similarly, and Samsung just seems better at that style. And then when you look at RNG and Samsung, I feel like RNG, with how good they are in the early game, if they were a stronger late game team, then I would favor them against Samsung. But I just feel like they show so many holes in their macro play and their map movement and their vision control in the later stages of the game that even if they get a lead, I'm not super confident in them being able to hold it over Samsung. So to me, it's Samsung number one. It's G2 and RNG fighting for number two.
But who is
If
your
you're
number two?
if you're doing your
RNG.
prediction now, then
It's
you got
time.
It's
Time.
RNG.
Yeah. I told you about the Korean Chinese groups before and the lack of confidence in G2. Kobe, you blew my mind at the start. Will G2 make it out of this group? Are you going to be our honorary deficio and hype G2 for us?
Think about it. He's like,
he wants to
appease the fanboys.
Hold on, let me
gains
message
the
Deficio, see if he can send me a check or something here.
No, they're in. According to I was talking to him earlier. They're gonna
Yeah. Oh, he actually, by the way, I didn't even have to make a bet for this. He literally just offered up. He was like, "I will kiss your shoes if G2 do not get out of groups." I didn't even have to bet him anything. So if they do. Yeah.
So you can hedge your bets here. Do you want to make a bet
What
that
if
G2
Deficio
will
just
get out
has
of
some
groups?
sort of weird foot fetish thing? You know, maybe he is getting.
He's always He's been looking at my feet weird.
Can I smell your socks?
Honestly, I do want to shake this up.
I know.
I really want to.
But is that a good reason to change your prediction?
Yeah, it is.
Like I said before, you don't get punished.
We
could
could even bet on it.
No one's going to check the tapes, Kobe. G2's first.
I want to do it.
We could bet on it.
I want to do it.
Then do it. Make a decision.
I will. Do you think
believe in yourself?
The thing is, I want to commit like the cardinal sin and say that a Korean team will not get out of group.
Oh.
You want to say G2 RNG? I'll bet on that.
I know you
I would
will.
bet that's not going to happen.
I know you will. I don't know if I could do it though. Oh man,
he's struggling. Meanwhile, we'll go on to Group D while Kobe decides.
Yeah.
Wait, Jet didn't do his. Is yours going to be the same as?
Yeah, it's Samsung RNG.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about why Samsung's a good matchup against RNG, and Fenerbahce's fourth.
Yeah. I can't do it.
All right, what's your prediction? Spit it out.
We're
I
boring.
can't do it. I think it's gonna be the same.
Have we had any
Samsung
differentiation
RNG.
in our
Literally none.
predictions? We're the worst. Group D. All right, this is awesome.
Well, I was gonna do it just for the sake of it, and then you talk me out of it.
G2 second? You want to do it?
Okay. What I was gonna do would be RNG and G2 get out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Basically,
Samsung third.
sense the internal conflict from Kobe, recognize that
Yeah.
this group could be close, and so close that he is willing to say Samsung will knock it out of
I'm gonna
groups.
do it. I'm gonna say G2's out of
The
here.
absolute madman.
Yeah,
Mhm.
getting out.
Samsung in third place.
Yeah.
The world's finalists,
Hold
not
him to
making
that.
it out of groups.
Hold him to that. His pick'em is going to have to be that way. Group D, we're moving on
No one's gonna remember.
to the final group of worlds. Everyone watches this show, Isaac. Group D, Flash Wolves, Misfits, TSM, Team WE. The dream group, some would say.
Yeah.
It could have been a better dream, but it's still the dream group.
Yeah.
Like the dream there was like some little scary something happened, like a witch showed up and it could have turned into a nightmare, but it's still a dream.
They're
It's
still
fine.
on the beach. They're sipping out of their coconut. They just
Yeah, yeah.
spilled a little
It
bit. of their
spilled a
drink.
little bit.
Spilled a
Oh,
little bit
no.
of their drink.
It's still fine.
Yeah, it's still pretty good.
We're probably going to I hope we're going to have some real differentiation in our predictions for this
we
group.
probably.
I don't know about that
Let's
one.
be
Chad.
honest here, okay? Is anyone predicting Misfits or WE to get out? So maybe WE.
Yeah,
versus
I'm predicting
Flash
WE to get out.
Yeah, so over
Yeah.
Flash Pulse?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we're gonna have some difference.
Great.
We're gonna have some difference of opinion.
Okay, I'm going to start.
All right.
I don't think Flash Wolves is very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were blown away by the impeccable play from WE in the play-ins.
Yeah. No, I was not. I was kicked into the Baron pit for a free Baron. But aside from that, we saw honking attitude. We have seen HQ. We've seen such a small amount of turnover in that LMS region.
Mhm.
And like last year, Flash Wolves was really bad in the group stage. And they were 4-6 in the group stage in MSI with relatively unimpressive performances, in my opinion. And I just don't see like what they have changed to have a kick in the butt to make that team better. I feel like the LMS is generally second
TSM
fiddle
also fairly
to the LPL.
unimpressive at that MSI.
That's great. I'm saying WE's probably going to win the group, even if they looked like Garbo in play-in, because I just don't actually have a huge amount of faith in any other one of these teams. But I do think that Maple has actually not looked that great. We know MMD doesn't do that much in the jungle for them. Karsa has been a good Gragas, but like I don't actually know if he's going to be that good at Sejuani because he's like a Lee Sin main in all of his most impressive performances. So I don't see that much out of Flash Wolves that make me scared of them in this group.
So you actually think WE is gonna get first in the group?
Yeah.
That
So,
that to me is right.
First, maybe I think this one we should start with our predictions, and then we can go through the reasoning because
Okay.
very clearly we're gonna have difference already.
Boom.
So
Okay.
Jat, go with yours. You're leading with WE.
You got WE.
WE, TSM, Flash Wolves, Misfits.
Okay. I mean, I'm agreed with Misfits last. I think TSM will get first. I think Flash Wolves will get second. I don't think WE will get out. WE looked, I think, pretty bad to me. And as far as talking about MSI, TSM did not have a very good performance. But they have a different AD carry. Like I actually think that is a very big difference. And they were really close to getting out of groups, and who knows how far they would have gone or whatever. Maybe they lose next. But I do think that Double Lift is a significant upgrade over Wild Turtle. And I think the team is a lot better with him as far as shot calling, as far as individual play. And I think that is exceptionally important, especially in this meta. I also think that Biofrost has been getting better and better. And Biofrost and Hansner to me were like stuck out like a sore thumb at last year's Worlds. I think that they had very poor performances compared to kind of what I was expecting, and I think to what a lot of people were expecting from them. But they have now gotten to play last year's Worlds, this year's MSI, Rift Rivals. They've had more and more experience. So I do think that you have something you want to say.
No.
I can hear his leg like
I'm
shifting against
excited.
the table.
I just see
He's
the
like,
smile on his face.
Yeah.
His knees are
Did
bouncing.
you see the InVen Global article that interviewed the 3 Korean head coaches?
I only saw an excerpt from it. I didn't read the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm basically just going to read the expert, like the unreasonable.
Did you
amount of
read the whole thing?
Not all of it yet.
So both of you did not even read the whole article.
I read
I'm not
some
the one
of
bringing
it.
it up here. I'm not referencing it.
I did read the whole thing.
Good for
Tell
you,
me,
Kobe. Good for you.
What did you? Okay, the TSM part.
Yeah.
They're asking him like, who's a good non-Korean team? It's like TSM. It has to be TSM. I can almost assure it. TSM's potential is gradually surpassing other NA and EU teams. Comparisons to G2 aside, TSM is on top of the other 5 participants from the NA and EU. They are no less skilled than any of the best Korean or Chinese teams. Hanser nails it all the time. You instantly realize why he's the best top laner in NA. His plays just give me chills every time I watch. The jungler's movement is also impeccable, making me wonder how the coach makes a call for his move. Bjergsen is by far the best, without a doubt. Doublelift is also excellent in team fights, and I've been watching Biofrost since before he joined the team, and he has improved so much. It's so overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
It can't be genuine.
It just feels like satire. And to be fair, there's kind of like a history of Koreans in interviews, like Korean pros from League and from other games, like, wow, my opponent is so exceptional. There's no chance of my victory, and then it's like,
and they just
bam, just slap them down, like completely just no chance. But so this feels certainly ridiculous, right? But I do think that they are not in a group with SKT or Longzhu or someone like that, and I'm like, yeah, TSM's gonna do it. They're gonna beat out everyone, right?
Yeah,
but I think this is a very different group, right? When we're talking about the second best team, you're saying the best team in this group is WE, who we both agree didn't even look that good in play-in, right? So to me, like, that's more of a bold claim than TSM getting first in this group, when I do think that they have been improving. I do think that they got a very easy group draw, and I do think it's like, if they don't get out of this group, like, that is just a complete failure.
Yeah.
I think it's actually a huge disappointment if they don't get first in this group.
I think it could definitely be it will be a disappointment if they don't get first in this group. I do think
So
that
you're
there's 3
predicting
teams.
disappointment.
Yeah.
He's from North America, Kobe.
Yeah. Hey man, I said Immortals are getting out of the group. I talked myself into putting
How
Cloud9
could
out
you
of
be
there.
disappointed if
Wait,
you're
didn't you put Cloud9
expecting the
third?
disappointment?
I'm ahead of the game. I'm not gonna.
He's just always
Yeah.
disappointed.
But no, I agree with you. TSM looks really good, and I think this is an incredibly close call, right? I think Flash Wolves could still get out of the group, but yeah, prediction WETSM Flash Wolves. Kobe, we haven't heard from
We're
you.
gonna have 3 different predictions for this group then.
So you WE second.
I'm gonna hit you with my predictions. Yeah, I'm gonna have I'm gonna have TSM, then WE, then Flash Wolves, then Misfits, because for similar reasons why I was kind of worried for Immortals there with the bottom lane, with Olay having to work an Ardent Sensor into his builds and not being as free. Sword Art is such a huge part of Flash Wolves and their playmaking and stuff, and if he's gonna have to be the Ardent Sensor all the time, and he doesn't always get to be Alistar, and we have highlights from him
So
from multiple years at Worlds with stuff like that. I still think he can, if he gets his hands on Rakan or something, Rakan is like the best of both worlds. You get to play make and you get to be Ardent Sensor, or he might even pull out the Taric and stuff like that. I do think that the meta is not the best for Flash Wolves right now. In addition to the slumping that people have been talking about from Summer Split and stuff. So that's why I think that WE are actually gonna get second. And I do have a lot of confidence in TSM right now, not only because of the adjustments that Azel talked about, but again, coming back to the boot camp, everything is actually not just from the coaches' interviews and stuff, from the players as well. I won't say which teams, but multiple different teams players have talked about how TSM is doing pretty good stuff in the boot camp as well.
Yeah, and to be fair, I do think TSM is good, and I do think the meta suits them. Like, specifically, the amount of work AD carries have to do in the current game, they have a perfect AD carry for that. Like, Doublelift is such a huge asset for them right now. But in the defense of WE, we're using their play-in performances like, this is exactly the type of team we're supposed to see. Like, they were really inconsistent with the type of team comps they were playing. Like, they were either super late game, and then they had that like random Ezreal jungle thing. And to me, they were never in danger of actually getting knocked out. So, like, yes, they didn't look good, but I also don't think they were giving exactly their best team compositions and preparing specifically to beat their opponents. So I think there is a higher peak to this team than we saw in the play-in stage. And I didn't use the term sandbagging once.
And I think that's fair to say that there's a higher peak,
But then you
but
just did.
but
Yeah, I
I
shouldn't
but
have
I
said
would
that.
I would also say
My bad.
that they so while they may have not gotten knocked out, I agree with that. I don't think I was not really sitting there thinking, "Oh,
Mhm.
wonder if WE is going to get out of play-ins." But I was thinking if WE is really looking like they have to work for it
Yep.
against young generation, if they're really looking like they have to work for it against some of these teams that I think are nowhere close to the level of some of the teams that they will be
Mhm.
playing later,
Oh, yeah.
then what does that say about them? And when I think of Cloud9, Cloud9 is obviously in a harder group. They looked so dominant. They made this group look very easy. There was one game out of 7 that went long and
Mhm.
looked like, ooh, maybe they could lose this game, right? That's it. Every other game was very dominant, and I don't think that team will get out of groups, right? And albeit they are in a harder
Right.
group, I just think that WE did not show the level of dominance that makes me think, yeah, this is the team that beats TSM. This is the team that beats Flash Wolves, and that's
Mhm.
not to say that it's impossible for them to come out and do that because maybe that they had a bad week. Maybe they're super nervous playing in front of the Chinese crowd and they're more
Mhm.
accustomed to it. Maybe they weren't showing their best compositions.
Yeah.
If they show a different level than what they showed in play-ins, then yes, I could see it. But I'm judging purely off of what I watched and
Yeah.
thinking, is this team the team that beats Flash Wolves and TSM? And I don't think so.
I think it is a bit of a mistake to only judge off of what you just watched. I
I'm talking
actually
about LPL as well
I know.
during summer split.
Oh, okay, okay.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I actually put a lot of value in what I consider to be a player's peak.
Hmm.
Like players that we've seen for a long time, or players that we have seen prove over like a good duration, right? Not just
Hmm.
like, oh, he peaked at for one game or something like that, but like
Mhm.
someone who's had a super strong performance like a whole year or something like that. Like
Yeah.
for Mystic for me is a pretty good example. This guy, I know that this guy has a very high ceiling.
Hmm.
And for sure, I feel like he is one who could definitely make up a lot of ground from the play-ins to his group stage. I feel like he could play a lot better.
Yeah. I think he had the
And
second worst CSD in all of playing.
yeah, and he's a guy that I feel like does have a higher ceiling. So
Mhm.
um,
That's the big worry for me actually is Mystic not performing in play-in. Like, that's a guy that I expected to smash, and he just, like
Yeah.
he died almost every game in laning plays.
Some people have him as the best AD carry at Worlds coming into it. People were saying this guy is
I
better.
Who said he was better than Prey?
I'm talking more about the community. I'm not talking about you guys.
Okay.
I've seen
yeah,
it.
some
Yeah,
people.
some people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, either way, he was 10th or something on your list.
Yeah, he
It's
is
not like this
really
is
highly ranked.
yeah, exactly. It's not like this is a ridiculous statement that
Mhm.
he's one of the best players at Worlds. We could leave it
Correct.
at that. People had him. I think so. Your averaged out list had him what 10th or 11th at top
Something
20
like that, yeah.
between three people from different regions, right? Frost Curran, LPL analyst, has him very highly rated. We've watched him, think he's amazing, right? But he did not
Yeah.
perform in play-ins.
Yep.
Did not perform very well there. We did see some games from WE that you're like, damn, this is more what you wanted to see. Well, I think of game 1 actually of their knockout stage game against. They did play. Oh, it was YG, right? Yeah,
Young
it was
generation.
YG.
Yeah.
So in game number 1, I thought that that was what I was expecting to see almost every game, where they
Mhm.
actually looked very well coordinated. They played, Jarvan Galio
That comp
Rumble. It
was
was
actually
like
insane. Like that.
they executed it very well, though, right?
Yeah.
Condi is everywhere. The game is essentially a highlight reel of Jarvan and Gage's being perfectly followed
With
up
Galio
on
and Rumble.
and them just dominating, right? And that's the level that I want to see. And if they can kind of bring that level of play, then yeah, they'll threaten these teams.
All right. To recap, 3 different predictions.
Yep.
Mhm.
I have WE, TSM, Flash Wolves, Misfits. Kobe.
TSM, Flash Wolves, Misfits.
And then I think a TSM Flash Wolves Misfits, or sorry, WE Misfits.
We haven't touched on Misfits at all. I feel like we'd be remiss if we don't say, like, why don't we think this team can step up to the level since they did surge so well in the European LCS?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're not a bad team, but I do think that this is a team that so they get to the finals. They kind of upset some teams. I feel like they have a somewhat unique play style. PoE. Kobe, you talked a lot about this. How they played very heavily around him in playoffs, and he was able to succeed because of that. That's something that I think these teams can answer. I think these are teams with 3 very very strong mid laners. When you're looking at just the mid lane talent, and if Misfits' way to succeed was playing through mid lane, if that's how they were able to upset Fnatic and
Mhm.
do these sorts of styles, going up against Bjergsen, going up against GA, going up against Mabel, going up against guys like these. I think it's extremely difficult for someone like PoE to be favored in any of those matchup. I actually think that I would favor his opponents in all 3 of those series. I also think that they're kind of more of this like oddball team. PoE likes to do these kind of weird things. They like to play some more like off meta stuff, and I just think
His
that
builds tilt the shit out of Azale.
yeah, they super do. I
Nashor's
think the
Tooth
Nash with
Orianna.
Orianna makes no sense, but either way, I just think that the way that this team has played can be answered by teams that are of equal or higher skill. Like we saw, they looked so figured out by G2, right? And I think that some of these teams are more of the level of G2 than they are of the level of some of the other teams that they actually did play against.
Yeah, I said during the group draw show that I don't like if W gets drawn into this group, I wouldn't be too surprised if they're 06. Only because like they had that playoff surge in the European LCS, but that was pretty much it. And that was to like that one shift, yo, let's camp mid, and it was very successful for them. But like you can't just be the camp mid team with a couple of weeks of practice on it or a month of practice on it and then expect to beat all of these world-class teams with it. So I think it's a really tough world for Misfits to be in.
Yeah, I just have to agree with Azale's reasoning. All pretty sound there, and good luck to Misfits because
Yeah. Man, I'm going to be so wrong about Europe if they start performing. Like I predicted them very low in a lot of this stuff, but it is a tough world for everyone. You got to have someone on the outside looking in.
I mean, this is a team that was 14 and 18 in the summer split in Europe, right? They're a team that surged and did very well in playoffs, then got trounced in the finals, but they had a really good quarterfinals. They had a really good semifinals. I think that was playing above their normal level.
Also, I've never gotten a pick'em right. Like I've never predicted all 8 teams to.
Wasn't there like one? Oh, you're talking about just part of it.
Even just the 8 teams getting.
Because I was like, one guy got pick'ems right.
Yeah.
That's
it's just tough. Like we just gave all our predictions for all of the groups. Like I am certain that I'm going to be wrong about something because essentially I've kind of just done this. I've kind of just done this regional tier list in a sense. Like Korea's number 1, China's number 2, NA's below them, and then I have Europe and LMS kind of fighting against each other. And that colors a lot of my rankings. Aside from like looking at exactly how the teams play for the exact placements, which is why at the moment I have Europe on the outside looking into most of these groups. Plus really tough draws. Europe got really hard group draws.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing for me. Like I was saying earlier, if G2 was in a different one of these groups, I would probably be predicting them to get out for sure. If they're in Group B or Group D, I think people in Group A and Group C kind of got a rough draw. And this time, G2, who in my opinion is Europe's clear best team, got the hardest possible group, right? And when your best team is in the hardest group, it's very easy then for your weaker teams to not have a performance or even just to play to their level and just not be as good as their opponents. I just think they kind of got a little bit unlucky.
I'm just so excited because there are not many matchups that I feel are kind of like dead matchups this year in groups. Groups is always for me the most exciting time. This is my favorite part of Worlds because we get to see the emergence of the meta and what went on in boot camp, and we get to see all the different teams play. But I'm actually so excited for these groups, and I thought the second draw was pretty good at like making sure we didn't have the super free or the super like nuts groups. So I think this is shaping up to be a pretty good year.
Sweet. Let's do some quick Twitter questions before we sign off. Morgan or I Fight for Pie is his @ tag. Is there any chance of any Nunu at Worlds? Good objective control along with Cho and Arden plus W. I don't understand the last bit.
Think
will we see Nunu at Worlds?
Is he saying like the Ardent?
He's saying
would
like
be
Ardent
like
sensor on someone and then you blood boil them and then they're an OP 80.
Or was he saying
maybe?
If he's saying Ardent on Nunu with like Stoneborn or something,
no, he's more just. I think he's thinking of this team comp. Like you have a Nunu, you have a Cho'Gath tank line, and then you have an Ardent sensor like support who's also getting blood boiled.
Yeah.
Well, regardless, I think Nunu right now in the jungle is a bit too squishy. After the nerfs to him and the nerfs to a lot of the items that he uses. So the initial round of nerfs were to the champion directly like 4 or 5 patches ago. And then a lot of those items got nerfed as well. So you could do it, but you have to really, really want that blood boil. And I don't think that any team is going to say that's worth it because you can get so much more value out of an Ardent from someone else. And
agree with that. I think even though we end up seeing a lot of diversity and like one person's going to have this weird pocket pick at Worlds, I don't think it's going to be Nunu, only because of like the unique things that Nunu would offer are actually just better with someone else. You want early counter jungling, go with Ezreal, right? You want someone who can buff your AD carry, go with Ardent Sense or Nidalee, because that's actually a better attack speed boost than Blood Boil is, especially when you have like Ardent and Athene's on.
Yeah, you overcap your AD carry.
Yeah, the AD carry should actually change his build if you have an Ardent Nidalee because of how much attack speed Nidalee gives that guy. So yeah, unfortunately, no Nunu. That's my prediction.
I agree. I also just think that the other tanks have so much more versatility. You know, you can play it slow on Gragas, you can be super aggressive on Gragas, and you can still enable your AD carry, but in a different way with Night's Vow and Locket and with good frontlining.
All right, last question we have today. Sassy or I'm Sassy said, would Longzhu versus SKT Worlds matchup be as hype as last year's Rocks versus SKT? Or would anything be?
Rocks versus SKT was ridiculously hype, especially because we were like, the Misfortune curveballs are coming out, and I don't know. I loved that series so much. In addition, there was the like the competing storylines going into it. You know, Smeb and all this stuff was going on, so it would be hype. You know, Longzhu has a lot of hype around them as well, and you know, being the meta breakers or whatever. But for me, I don't think it could actually match the Rocks Tigers versus SKT.
The SKT Rocks series was too perfect. It had MF, it had the cross map Ash Arrow, it had Bengi coming in off the bench when they were down,
Superman.
Playing a pick that no one thought he could play.
I totally forgot. Akoma accidentally picks
it had everything, man. Like, yes, it's possible because you have the same type of, you know, Longzhu versus SKT, two super hype Korean teams coming in against each other. But like, it is so incredibly unlikely that all of those things happen.
Guys are a bunch of Debbie Downers. I think it could be super hype. I think.
Were you there? You weren't even there.
I watched the games. I wasn't at the games live. I was doing the all stream, Kobe.
Okay.
Not all of us can cast the same game, okay? But I think what has me so excited for this, and I agree storyline wise, I think it's almost impossible to beat that, right? That was like the perfect storm, but the thing that really does excite me is the potential of the super carry top lane matchup, right? You have Huni, who's this guy who's like a worldwide fan favorite, who has, I think, been striving for greatness his whole career, who has dominated in Europe, who has dominated in North America, who is now on the undisputed best team of all time. And there's questions, right? There's questions about him. There's questions of, you know, is Faker as good as he used to be? There was whispers of, oh, BDD's better than Faker now. There's, you know, kind of it's feeling more realistic every year, I think, slightly, to be like, oh, maybe this is the year the SKT actually loses, right? And I think that is what kind of is exciting about it for me. The fact that we could have, you know, kind of the new kings, right? And that it is somewhat realistic. And the way in which it would be done, like I just really hope if they do square off, it's carry versus carry on the top lane every time. I want it to be explosive. I want it to be, you know,
hit him with the Lucian versus hit
him with the Lucian versus Jace. Let's go.
Oh man, that would be hype.
All right. Anyways, Worlds is very exciting. That'll do it for the group draw guide from us. This will actually be our last show before we leave for China. We're filming this a little bit early. We're flying off to China. Then
we did three
before the group stages.
3 recordings.
We did 3 recordings of the dive this week to get everything in while we have the camera.
Good work, us.
We're going to be doing the dive throughout Worlds in between each week. It will be audio only. It'll still be released on YouTube and all the podcast platforms, but you won't be able to see us. Can't bring our set with us, unfortunately. Too expensive.
Yeah. We could maybe make one, you know, with cardboard paper in the background, but I don't think it would be as nice, so you're just going to have to live without it.
Yeah, I'm okay with audio only and not porting cardboard. The mic box is heavy enough. Anyway, keep tweeting us with questions, even when we're on the road, at Riot Chat, at Riot Kobe, at Riot Azael, hashtag the dive LOL, the dive LOL.
Yeah, hit us with your predictions as well for Worlds. You can flame us. You can see if we're right. I already forget what Kobe ended up with.
Oh,
with
man.
Some of his predictions.
I'm going to get flamed.
We'll have to check the tapes.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys next week.